And now with vibe coding.
Did he just unironically say vibe coding?
And this isn't marketing speak.
Okay, this is a good start. See you later. Intel got on the stage at the Consumer Electronics Show 2026 today to take back the performance crown from competitor AMD and from part-time competitor, full-time sugar daddy NVIDIA. Get out there, Intel. Give them hell.
Graphics at Intel is an interesting history. Lacking in key features, driver support, and frankly, performance.
Okay, not the strongest opener, but maybe he's cooking.
And so today, we are very proud to announce the next generation integrated GPU we've been referring to as 12xe, but the world will know as Intel Arc B390 graphics.
Okay, it's not a desktop GPU either, but maybe he's got somewhere he's going with this.
Today, we're excited to confirm that the new Arc graphics in Panther Lake will be the first integrated graphics ever to ship day one with AI-based multi-frame generation, delivering 3 AI-generated frames for every 1 rendered frame.
Please clap.
That's right, Intel is the first one in 2026 to announce multi-frame generation for X. No, wait, that's not. It's the first one to have multi-frame generation on integrated graphics on day one shipping. The more qualifiers you add, the more good it is. But Intel hasn't forgotten about gaming. In fact, it hasn't forgotten about gaming so much that it's working with Saudi Arabia PIF and Jared Kushner investment EA Games to integrate MFG 4X.
As we turn on multi-frame generation in the driver, you can see that we can scale to an incredibly smooth experience, over 120 frames per second, and nearly 3 times faster than AMD.
Wait. Bring that chart back up. Zoom. Enhance. No, wait, don't enhance that much. Okay, that's good. Intel is pulling at NVIDIA. These motherfuckers. That is not how that works. Been saying this for like a year now.
So let me attempt to do some math.
Intel is putting 2 types of frame generation on the same chart and pretending that it means fucking anything. This is exactly what NVIDIA did last year, and it's just as bad now when Intel does it as when NVIDIA did it last time. We might as well just type in a frame rate number into a calculator and then hit X and then hit some other number to make that bigger than the number that went in when we typed it in the first time. This is not how benchmarks work, and it also completely ignores the fact that image quality isn't even the same. It is not comparable to randomly multiply the actual frame rate by some number to then get an output and put it on a chart next to another number, multiplied by a different multiplier with a different image at the end of it. You are comparing 2 different looking games. The point is, it's not comparable. I mean, at this point, they might as well be running like a 1080 Ti at 40 FPS, put that on the charts too, and then run lossless scaling 20x for $7, and you get 800 FPS, and now it's the best one, right? That's how we're comparing it. We're just gonna multiply stuff at random, completely arbitrarily, and ignore all other factors. We might as well just do that. But there's good news. You can still save this, Intel. You can still save the keynote. Give us something. Give us anything, like a handheld gaming device.
So today, we're excited to share with you that we will be launching an entire handheld gaming platform with Panther Lake. And we'll have more news to share on that from our hardware and software partners later this year. I hope you stay tuned. Thank you so much.
Was that it? Was that was the whole announcement?
So now let's turn our attention to AI.
No! We brought you this video with our brand new limited edition Disappointment Tour PC Build t-shirt on store.gamersnexus.net, recapping all of the worst hardware events in 2025 and one banned tour date style shirt on the back. The front has an array of GPUs from the big video card vendors in various states of being redacted, with a censored GN logo at the bottom as a throwback to our most prized time of the year, when we got Bloomberged. This is shown on the back of the t-shirt with other dates. The shirts are available in a comfortable 100% cotton with black or a highly breathable tri-blend design with vintage coloring on the logo print. The back of the shirt has the best of the worst, referencing AI, what we thought was NVIDIA manipulating the press, Intel being in total freefall, the tariff situation, and more. Buying one of these directly supports another year of independent reporting and coverage from us, as we're majority funded these days by the audience, not by corporate backers, as we've successfully wound down the percentage of ads we sell to revenue we bring in from public support, like from our audience. Thank you for all of that. Head over to store.gamersnexus.net to support us directly for 2026 by buying a Disappointment Tour t-shirt for 2025. Intel's keynote opened CES 2026 with the Intel CEO and man who was running Cadence at the time it was convicted of unlawfully exporting chip design tools, Lip-Bu Tan, and he said the quiet part out loud.
This announcement will resenting the next evolution of the PC.
Don't worry, Lip-Bu, everyone here already resents the next evolution of the PC. But he started the keynote with some good news, which is that technically, Intel has fulfilled its legal obligations.
I'm pleased to share that we have delivered our commitment on shipping our first 18A products by the end of 2025.
That's right, checkmate, investor lawyers. Intel started CES 2026 with fresh news from 2025, which is not at all related to its plans to probably beg the government for more money this year. Now, Intel's keynote mostly involved the usual executive circle jerk, where they call all of their friend executives onto the stage and talk about how great they are and how much they love their partnership, where the revolving door of suits comes through the stage at the Consumer Electronics Show to talk about their B2B partnerships. Now, this did yield some actual news, technically. For example, it re-announced its Panther Lake laptops that it announced last year, now with a detailed spec sheet. Technically, it also said it has a handheld for like 5 seconds, and it also has a new Arc GPU for laptops, but not for desktops. There's no B770 at the show, no discrete desktop GPU, no desktop CPUs, but maybe Intel has a one more thing moment at the last minute of the trade show where reserved off stage somewhere, they've got a B770 hidden, just waiting for the talking heads to pause and grab it to get thunderous applause from the audience, right?
For those of you in person, hang tight. I have another. Do I have it up here? Oh, I don't have it up here.
Okay, look, but he did kind of like lead us on there. So you can't really blame me for having the hope the Consumer Electronics Show would have consumer news. Anyway, they said some other stuff that we can talk about. For example, they did announce that there was a whole lot of
AI.
Because that way users can really trust the product and use and have privacy guarantees. So,
but there is something else useful that came out of this, which is that Intel said the other quiet part out loud. That's right, Intel admitted that AI isn't about advancing technology or innovation or doing good things for people or humanity or advancing consumer functions on computing devices in any way. No, instead, the reason is investment.
And we're taking the same approach on the edge as we do with the AI PC. Establish a large footprint of leadership hardware that activates investments in applications by our software partners.
You gotta keep the circular flow of money circularly flowing. Intel's actual news, sort of, is primarily about Panther Lake. Again, the Panther Lake SoCs or CPUs are what it announced in late 2025, and Intel focused on its Core Ultra 3 series of SoCs, which it says that nobody buys.
We've also consolidated all the IOs onto a single chip. This was a big ask by our customers' design teams because they want to take Series 3 and expand its capabilities and its market coverage. But people don't buy SoCs, and we know that.
At least Intel gave more specs detail this time than it did previously. We can go over that. I'm desperate for anything here. Panther Lake mobile devices will begin shipping on January 27th, with the handheld gaming systems coming later in the year. As a reminder, Intel changed its naming scheme to be less confusing recently, which is why they've announced the Intel Core Ultra X9 388H, the Ultra Non-X9 386H, the Ultra X7 368H, the Non-X7 366H, and other easy-to-remember names like the Core Ultra 5 322. The Intel Arc B390 ships alongside these, and the B390 isn't a discrete desktop GPU in the Intel Battlemage series, but a mobile part. Total core count, mixing core types, is 16 for the X9 388H with a 5.1 GHz max advertised P-core boost frequency, 18 megabytes of cache, and then 12 Xe cores for the B390 GPU solution. Max advertised GPU boost is 2500 MHz. Maximum turbo is listed at 65 watts and 80 watts. The 386H gets rid of the B390 and just uses Intel graphics, as they call it, at 4 Xe cores, while retaining CPU core count at 16, but with a reduction to clock of 200 MHz. The other CPUs are variations on this, with no decipherable rhyme or reason to the names for the average Best Buy shopper. The good news is that they're just prepping for the future, when there won't be average Best Buy shoppers. Because people shouldn't buy computers at Best Buy, but for other reasons, which is that you won't be able to buy computers. The 7 and the 9 don't differentiate GPU model or core count, so these names make sense. Some models have an Intel B370 model GPU, which moves to 10 Xe cores and 2400 MHz from 12 and 2500 MHz on the B390. The B390 also has 16 megabytes of L2 cache and 96 XMX engines. Intel showed its B390 with 388H benchmarks at 45 watts against its own prior 285H with Arc 140T at 45 watts, so ISO power, in a first-party benchmark chart. Obviously, these need independent validation, but Intel claims that its new solution is 76% faster on average, but the benchmark is running at 1080p high with 2x upscaling, which needlessly muddies the comparison. Unfortunately, this chart is of limited usefulness. Intel is also claiming up to 27 hours of battery life, with the footnote defined as, quote, Netflix streaming with an X9 388H, end quote, in the idea pad. And they were running Netflix at 1080p. This claim obviously depends on the battery and the rest of the laptop. Intel also briefly re-talked about XeSS3 again, this time calling the upscaling solution, quote, modern rendering, end quote, which seems like a stretch, but I guess seems about in line with the direction we're going with NVIDIA, where they're referring to rendering graphics in video games as effectively legacy at this point, unless you're using some kind of upscaler and multi-frame generation. Intel took the opportunity to talk about its ribbon-fed and PowerVia technologies, which are actual technologies that are actually interesting, for about 27 seconds in the 1 hour long keynote. And these are in Panther Lake, something they've mentioned a few times already, but we want to talk about technology and things that do cool stuff, so we're going to do that, even though technically they announced these a little bit ago, but we have some stuff that we can maybe bring you up to speed on in case you want to remember why anyone cares.
RibbonFET is gate-all-around technology, transistor technology, that provided our architects a way to precisely control electrical current, critical for performance and energy efficiency. Backside power delivery via PowerVia enhances power flow and signal delivery. What's this mean? It enables Intel to deliver up to 15% better performance per watt with more than 30% better chip density.
Intel is using backside power delivery called PowerVia for these new 18 angstrom or 18A CPUs. We actually previously filmed an unpublished interview discussion with analyst David Cantor about backside power delivery. Now, the reason the interview didn't go up with David Cantor a couple years ago was because it was sort of predicated on a bunch of rumors that ended up not being true, where Intel was supposed to be shipping backside power delivery in CPUs earlier than it actually is. Now it is. So finally the discussion is relevant, and it's pretty interesting because David Cantor goes through some of the technicals of what this is, why it's interesting, what the benefits are. So we'll play like a minute or two of that so you can at least walk away from this video with some good technical foundation as to what that is, since Intel decided to not provide anything even remotely close to useful on stage.
Generally speaking, the papers that I've seen tend to point at like 6 to 8% better frequency at the same power level. Pretty significant improvements in density in terms of how many transistors and circuits you can pack into a given area. And then also better voltage droop at the system level. Everyone in the community, overclockers, they understand, right? Voltage droop.
Bad.
Yeah, very bad,
Yeah.
very bad. Right, and so if you can improve that in the silicon, then that's really nice because you're sort of helping the system be better and maybe placing less stress on your VRMs or other parts of the power delivery. To baseline, let's talk about how power and data get into the chip, right?
Sure.
We've got our package bumps. And then modern chip might have 15 layers of metal before you get to the transistors. And those levels of metal are used to deliver power, right, through 15 layers. And some of those layers are primarily for power, some are primarily for data. And one of the fundamental tensions is power and data want different things, right? If you think about power, you want big fat wires that deliver a lot of power, low resistance. Right? Something's got to power those floating point multiply accumulate units. But for data, we want the smallest wires we can get. We want to pack them in really dense so we can just move the data really easily. So there's this tension. What backside power does is says, okay, let's take one side. If you think about building this out, what you do is you first build out the data side and then the transistors. And then you build out the power on the backside.
Okay.
And so that means that you now have dedicated metal layers for data, dedicated metal layers for power, and the power delivery actually becomes a lot shorter. So you might be using on the order of like 3 to 4 power layers between the package bumps and the transistors. It's actually a much easier way to deliver power on top of getting to use the specific metallurgy you want, the specific aspect ratios you want, the specific dielectrics you want for power and data separately.
So a short version is that the end result is better power efficiency, and you might even be able to bump the clocks, as we're seeing here in some of the studies with power via backside power delivery as a result of this. It's still new technology as far as being deployed into actual use, but Intel has been talking about it for a long time, like years at this point. Manufacturing for backside power delivery is the hard part. That's why it's taking them so long. It's more complicated, and it requires flipping the wafer and grinding it, effectively sending it through additional manufacturing steps, which can also affect yields.
First you build the transistors, and then you're going to build out the data wires. Okay, you're done with that, and then you flip the wafer over, you grind off the backside to get very, very close to the transistors, and then you start dropping in the power wires. And that's kind of why you call it backside.
So is that grinding off like a silicon oxide layer or something? Or is
It's just the silicon wafer.
Okay.
Standard silicon wafer is, relative to a transistor, pretty thick. You're grinding through microns of silicon.
Okay. So that's about it for Intel's news. It was like a little bit of Panther Lake stuff, which is just, I mean, they already announced Panther Lake, so that was kind of a dud, pretty lame. This is, hey, it has specs now. Yay. And they also had a non-desktop GPU. We did message Intel and ask, hey, B770, question mark, and they said, not at this show. No B770 at this show, or also, just to be fair, they didn't confirm its existence, although Intel on Twitter has accidentally already confirmed its existence. But anyway, that's the news from Intel. We did our best to put some actual useful information in here. Thanks to David Cantor 2 years ago for doing that interview about a product that didn't ship as it was rumored. It has finally become a pretty useful discussion, so hopefully that gives you some foundation for PowerVia and RibbonFET. I don't know why Intel didn't take the opportunity to actually talk about its technology on stage, but it did succeed in the executive circle jerk, so probably all their friends will come back next time for more, I guess. That's probably what they were going for. All right, thanks for watching. We'll have other keynote coverage as well. NVIDIA is like an hour and I think 32 minutes long of pure pain distilled into leather jacket form, and I'm still working through that. That might already be on the channel, though. I don't know. We'll check back for that one, or for the AMD one. Thanks for watching. Subscribe for more. Go to store.gamersnexus.net to support us directly while we cover the consumer electronics show and all the enterprise news added. We'll see you all next time.